Oh, I'm filming.
The narcissist.
Like-minded people come together to make a clan. Okay, so all the different ways. Okay, passive aggressive is huge. It's actually probably where this next article is going to go next week. Withholder of love. Aloof. Yeah, Nancy, next week I'll tell you if you're going to work or not.
Manipulator, yeah.
The manipulator.
Controller.
The controller. There you go. Okay. Rager. Okay, so all these different ways that I'm trying to get someone to chase me. All right? And so most of us will know one better than the other. In my world, growing up in this town when I did, I definitely knew this one better. Because this whole room better be pleased or there's a good chance I'm going to get stabbed. Literally. And I can even take it out of that world, have a bunch of older brothers, they better all be pleased or you're going to get the cherry belly or whatever else. So just a normal world, those pieces are there. So I definitely know this one better. Someone else might know this one better. Rage has worked very well. It has moved people away so I can have time to think. I've learned to be a bully. I'm trying to be so politically correct. And in that, everyone else can feel safe. In the junior highs, now they call them middle schools. Why is everyone attracted to the bully? Because that way they can feel safe, because if they're close to the bully, then they're in that place. There's a big attraction in that fear to be attracted to the bully. So we each learn different ways to survive, neither good or bad. Actually, thank goodness they're the survival skills that have allowed us to be here today, but they might not be productive to us today. Cool? So the bully is now invented and doing his thing. Oh, I'll protect you, little child. And blah, getting aggressive, doing this, talking smack about this one, talking about that, doing whatever, going and actually pushing someone, doing whatever they're doing. And guess what? The scared child's still scared. So the bully underpasses the true identity and comes back to the scared child. I suck. I'm a piece of shit. It'd be better for this whole world if I was just gone. I can't do anything right. And so it attacks the scared child. Well, what happens when something attacks the scared child? It scares the scared child. And so it screams out help for the ego, for the bully. Well, the bully's already failing, so it says screw you. Well, that scares it more, and so we get caught in this circle of just not liking ourselves and being caught in this insanity. And then something might happen, and there's a bump. This little peekaboo into our true identity. Now, in the relapse prevention work I do, or addiction work I do, these windows are really fast. Because homeostasis and getting back to that status quo is how we've survived. So I believe, for me, anyone in any kind of recovery, I have the highest respect for of anyone in this world. Because I am having to override my brain that is saying, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. I'm still going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to call my sponsor rather than go have a drink. I'm going to say no rather than just say yes. I have a young lady in Santa Fe that I've been working with just lately. And for the first time in her life, she was always told as a kiddo, if you don't do that, mom's going to be dead. I'm gonna die. Just this week, she didn't make the coffee. She does all the work for the family, meaning at the house, and then she's the one who goes to work. And so just this week, and she goes, I didn't just not make the coffee one day. I didn't make it 5 out of 7 days. And everybody lived. And how huge that was for her, because there was a piece of her that was saying, if I don't make the coffee, Mom's going to die, which means I'm going to die. And so that was a huge victory. This week she's going to try to have 10 minutes a day that she sits and just thinks about her day. So those incremental scaffolding pieces are huge. So we have this going on. These windows are going to come and go, and that's okay too. And if my addiction is Nancy because she's an addict, I'm making that up, and I'm so worried about her and her work, she has actually become my drug of choice. And so I'm trying to jump in her window when actually I'm getting my hit, called having her be the identified problem and not holding myself here. So these things play around in that. Cool? I went on a bunch of tangents, but I hope you followed them, or at least went for a ride. Okay. So somewhere in here, this is going on, and we get bumped enough that we actually have that phenomenological transformative moment that says, who am I? I've been domesticated into this, I've been domesticated into that, I've survived this, but who am I? So since I don't have stairs, I'm going to use 2 people if they're willing. Kyle, I want you, because you're big. And you're not going to be the scared child. Okay, so right now just stay here. And then I need one other person. Anybody, don't worry. You're not even going to have to do anything. I do everything.
I do whatever he says.
Permanent volunteer.
So here I am. I'm born. Life is good. Oh, I need some help. So I invent the scared child. And she pouts and she whines and she does all these different things. And you can continue to do them. You get to do your acting. You're even on film. But it's not holding up. And it's not working. And so I need some help here. So the scared child reaches over and says, bully, please rescue me. And the bully comes out and says, I will rescue you. And now you get to face those guys. And what we've learned in the religious world, yeah, do the muscles. What we've learned in the most religion and literature is what happens, what's the one thing God gives us, whatever that means, is free will. So the true identity steps into the backseat and goes, I love you guys, but you're driving this vehicle really bad. Because now they're both fighting for the steering wheel. And they don't trust her, and I just sit back here and I'm going, oh my goodness, and they're beating each other up, and sooner or later we go clunk, and we hit something. And now the true identity gets to go, I love you, scared little child, and I am not going to throw you out of the bus, but I am going to put you in the back seat. And we have someone at the door, so let's see if we're a scared little child. Anybody? Is that anyone? Child? That's right, a curious child. Oh, it's reading youth group.
Will you put my seatbelt on too?
I am, but reverse will make sure.
Is this the NA meeting? No?
The which meeting?
NA.
No.
Sorry.
There might be one, over across the street.
That's the way.
Thank you, sorry.
It's a good meeting, though.
Hey.
It's good to see you. Good, those are the windows we look for. So with this scared child, I've not thrown it out of the bus. It still probably doesn't trust me, but I'm going to put her seatbelt on. Okay, now the bully might be a little more difficult, but I still get it back there somehow. I strap him in, and now I drive the car. I still have to listen to these two. And the reason I need to listen to them is actually all the stimuli goes into this part of my brain first. Just like me seeing a body walking by, I want this room safe, so we wanted to check. And luckily, I hope he makes it to an NA meeting. So all of our stimuli goes into, all of our data goes in to the limbic system first. Fight, flight, freeze, fornicate, feast. And then we have the viral trip if we have the disease, and use. We don't use that one with an F word. We just have it as use. Okay? So all my energy goes in there. That's what these guys are. They are my limbic system. Because they have kept me alive. Okay, so I still do listen to them. And then in that, I'm actually healing wounds because I'm hearing from these two, but then with my discernment, I decide what I need to do next. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
So Ted, I have a question.
Good.
We're talking about scared child and bully. Why does that happen to us? Why can't we learn to come from our true identity instead of have those things?
Because we're human.
develop?
That means
But as we're human, we came in our humanness and our true identity.
and we got dinged up. We maybe weren't fed right when we wanted to. Maybe we were molested. Maybe our friend died. And so in that, I can't stay with just love because I'm navigating this earth. Plus, I have skin and you have skin, which disconnects us. And so we're trying to have that connection. So I think the human dilemma, I think it's actually the spiritual path, is how do we take this information and then get it up to the amazing frontal lobe we all have so we can come from a place of love.
Okay.
Now they're saying, and I haven't backed it up yet, and something we'll do next year, supposedly dolphins come from their frontal lobe. And then if it's dangerous, they go down into their limbic system. I haven't proved that yet. That's what you're wishing it could be. I do have a kiddo, and I think I've seen a few people that actually, I call them the dolphin children. And they do come from the frontal lobe. And they scare the heck out of me. Because I worry they're going to become the mules. They're going to become for predator world. Because they're coming from love in a very violent world.
Okay.
So for survival, we have learned to do that. Okay, bummer. Maybe we can evolve to not have to come from there. So, great question. Where I get excited about this is with these two little characters behind me. If I actually listen to them, I'm healing old wounds that I might not even know what that wound is. So here's where I get to tell a story. And because I have honesty and integrity, the first half of the story is true. The second half's a lie. But it's not a lie because I already told you it's a lie. Okay? So the first half of this story is true, and then the second part is there. So, we'll get, and that will help explain it. Okay. So, but what I really get excited about is these two. Oh, I want to say, these guys aren't going to trust this new person driving the car. Because they're going, dude, you haven't done so well in the past. You've been actually sitting in the back seat. Now we're supposed to just trust you. It was better when we just tried to beat each other up and fight for the steering wheel. Because at least we know that, and then we're comfortably miserable. Okay? So even in doing this inventory, so I put down purity of intent as I'm thinking about it. It's like, the bully's going to go, bullshit! Just the other day you tried to manipulate that person out of their piece of gum. And honesty and integrity. I haven't fished in forever, so I'll make it up. Bullshit! Just the other day you caught that 14-incher and you told everyone it was 17 inches, and as a matter of fact, you even liked yourself because it was only a 12-incher. Okay? So these guys are not going to be really excited about putting these in here. And you can learn that about internal family systems, but that's another day as well. So you guys are giving me my list for the monthly talks that we're going to start doing. So just know that this is a bit of a debate, and it's going to take time, and we work that. Okay, so here's the half of the story that's true. Okay, so when I was 13, I think, maybe 14, working at Taos, Texaco. And Taos, Texaco is now McDonald's. And so I'd ride my motorcycle over, and back then I was 4'11", I weighed 99 pounds. And I know that really well because I wanted to be 5 feet and weigh at least 100 pounds. So I know that as a fact. I couldn't wait. And so I'm just this little guy with a little motorcycle. I drive over to Taos, Texaco, I clean the bathrooms, I talk to the gas station attendants, and then they'd go home, and then I'd pump gas and check, it's full service. So I'd do full service gas station until 9 o'clock, and then I'd go home. And back then that wasn't against the law. It was just what little children did, is they ran gas stations. And in the spare time, I had to change tires. I still got them moved down. And the way you change tires is you heat up the bead of the tire and you use the machine and you get it over and then you fill it back up. So that was my job, and it was a good paying job. It was $2.75, and you got a 10-cent bonus for every can of oil you sold. And so that was my day. Well, Taos at the time had something that was really horrendous. It's not talked about. It was kind of ending with you, Genevieve, by your age group. And it was called honky hunting. And it's where a group would find a white person alone and beat the hell out of them. Well, I think I'm pretty white. Like at the Taos, Texaco, they probably hired me because I probably glowed and they didn't know that the gas station was still open. And honky hunting was a real issue within our town. And they really beat people up badly. And so one night, I was just shutting down the gas station, and back then, it was no computer, so you had this key and you turned off each pump. And I was on the 4th pump and I was turning it off, and all of a sudden I see the high riders pulling in the low riders and a few people. And back then you had a timing chain that you put electrical tape on, and you had your club, and you had some other clubs, and all these guys are probably 25 years old, and so they're coming my way, and so they're coming towards me, and I just figure I'm gonna die. And so my scared child, I'm too small to run, they're too much bigger than me. I have a Yamaha 100 Enduro, so they can definitely catch me on that. And oh, by the way, I'm old enough that there were no cell phones. So I know I'm down for the count. And so all these pieces, I'm just shaking, I'm worried. And but when they got to twice as far as Steve in the back there, out of nowhere, I take the lighter out of my pocket and I take the hose from the gas station. I go, "Come on, motherfuckers, come here! I'm gonna blow you up! I'm gonna blow me up! I'm gonna blow the whole fucking town up!" And remember, I'm this tall. I have the gas like this, and I have the lighter like this, and those guys are like, "Dude!" And they get in their cars and they leave. And so my bully saved my life. Okay, that part of the story is true. My parents never knew this. I actually talked about it at the TCA for the first time 3 years ago. And this is a big piece as well. They didn't know about it until then, because if I had told them then, I wouldn't have been able to work. And then I wouldn't have been able to buy my new skis. And so I couldn't tell them. And then I couldn't tell them later because I didn't tell them then, so I'd be in trouble for not telling them then. And so within our wounds, this is really big when we get into things like sexual molestation or different ways we've been abused or different pieces, because that shame starts building on it. And so it's a big piece to keep in mind of how our psyche adapts and builds scabs on these wounds because the brain is just trying to get me out of that pain in that moment. So I can promise you I didn't stay in bully mode long. Like, I never knew how hard it was to ride a motorcycle if your muscles are completely tight. Motorcycles don't work that way, especially if you're shivering. Okay, so, and so I definitely was scared, rightfully so. I thought I was going to die. Now I'm going to make up this part of the story. When's homecoming?
October.
So October. So it's October this year, and I walk up to Sentinel Bank, and I'm standing there, and I'm on the sidewalk, and all of a sudden I see a big group coming, and there's clubs and there's noise, and my scared child goes, "Oh my God, here comes the gang, they're gonna get me." And the bully goes, "Let's blow up the fucking town." And the true identity gets to go, "Hey, you guys, we're here to watch the Taos High School band go by. Yes, we might have trauma from that, but we are not going to die. Also, now I can outrun anyone who's drunk. And I have a cell phone, and I'm no longer 4'11". So we are okay, but I appreciate that information. But let's enjoy the kiddos as they go by in the band." Which now my brain has a different experience that I can hold on to rather than I'm just going to die. So I'm actually staying emotionally sober as well as healing wounds from the past, because these two start trusting me more and more and more with my discernment. You with me?
Yeah.
So this is huge. And so it's how we also override our brain when we go into panic attack mode. Not, "God, here I go again, I suck." Okay? It's also when we start having cravings and working with our brain. So all of a sudden, this piece of me starts to be the parent that maybe I didn't have. Or even the parent I had, but it can just do it with more love. And so as these guys start screaming and yelling and doing their thing, that's how I know I'm out of alignment. So for me, besides these two keeping me alive, today they are my most important teachers. So why would I want them off the bus? If they're speaking up, it means something's out of alignment, so I might as well go in and get aligned rather than have a blowout. So they become my number one things. If today it's like, "Oh, Ashley's going to be there tonight, I got to make sure that I'm really smart and I just have it all together. I'm at timeout. I'm somewhere out of alignment, so I use my HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. But as the grief dude, I add S for halts, because I need my sad in there too. And I check into what's really going on, because it probably has nothing at all to do with Ashley. And so I see what's out of alignment rather than blowing out. So these are my most important teachers, but I better have that Puma alive. And I have to be a conscious observer of myself, and that's the piece I love. So within this, I honor that the inner energy, the information goes in there first to keep me safe. Thank you. And then from here, I can then have discernment. I used to say all the time, I'd say, "Well, that's the prayer of discernment." And people would go, "Well, what's that prayer?" I go, "If I knew that, I'd be a billionaire." No, it's not a set prayer, and it's not from that part of the brain, but it's from this area of how do I work with these so I come more and more from here. And what you'll notice, at least I have for me, these two get quieter and quieter and quieter. We haven't heard Genevieve cry lately. There we go. Are you my friend? So in other words, they start to trust that discernment as I heal wounds. And I can have more and more emotional sobriety. I can have serenity. And I believe and I covet serenity so much because I'm pretty sure during the day I'm going to have very little peace from the outer world. So I don't try to control the outer world. I work with this inner world. So that's how I play with this part in the mental health world of me. And for my own brain, I wouldn't have those, because then I just say, screw it, it's just psychology, battle shit. Okay? So we each have to find our words and how they work for us and whatever we need to do. But the first part is stalking and finding what this piece is.
And how do you do that?
Well, literally, okay, I'm going to use a metaphor. You go to the bar and you flirt. Okay, in other words, wow, you know, this piece feels pretty real to me. And so I put it down just on a paper and I play with it for a while. I just watch it and see if it really just goes chunk, or if it sits here and I wish it was a piece of me. And slowly, these are absorbed. I believe most of us, due to survival, have forgotten our true self. And we have been domesticated into coming from these in order to perform in this world. And that's not a diss. And this is when Conversations of God came out. I felt he sold so many copies. There was good stuff in there, but he sold so many copies because he did re-member. So how do we remember ourselves? In other words, rejoin our true self. And I had to do after my girls died, and I felt I murdered them because it's the only job a dad's supposed to do is protect his children. I had to look in the mirror every day for almost 6 months and say, I love you, my friend. Thank you for being who you are. And I'd go back and I'd lay down and I'd say, regret is a crippler. Regret is a crippler. And I don't believe anything I'm saying, but I'm going to keep doing it because somehow I have to live. And then I start looking for these.
Ted, will you tell us how long you've been on this path?
1997.
So that's just a good reminder
Yeah.
for us. So like
That's a
it's,
very good reminder.
yeah, it's like the work takes time.
February 8th, 1997.
That's what I was gonna say, that sometimes I don't even notice that I'm coming from my bully or my scared child.
And isn't it beautiful
And
when you
somebody else will
notice?
say, well, where are you coming from? And I'll go, oh,
Can I tell a
But I
story
don't
about
know.
you?
I guess so.
I'm not going to make you cry. So Nancy one day was bringing in the flower pots. And I seen her talking to a client who happened to be a male. And we're at the kitchen table. And she's bringing the flower pots. And I see her walk by. The next time I see her walk by, the next time she walks. And so her powder, her scared child, came out because we were abandoning her. And I just looked over at Nancy and I said, you know, if you wanted help, you could have asked. She goes, oh God, all right, that's true. And so we get caught in our survival skills rather than having that. And the minute I mentioned that, she's like, you're absolutely right. Because also I don't want to rescue someone because maybe she's having fun showing herself with the flower pots. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
That's just how
I
it
missed the
is.
block.
It's the made out part of the story.
You can add the second half because I don't know that. But all of a sudden it was so fun to watch her move back into a soft place. Realized we were there helping this client. She was bringing the flower pots in so they didn't freeze. And she didn't need to be rescued, and if she wanted help, she could have asked. So all of a sudden, she owned everything rather than these two asshole male chauvinist pigs who aren't helping her out and rescuing her. And so she did a full paradigm shift. And she wasn't even the client.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
People with personality disorders, do they not have the center, or is there something distorted where they can't have the capacity to have that?
Quite often. So I'm going to move in. People, especially in the attachment world, which is where I think a lot of personality disorders come from, if we're talking about the old DSM-4 and Axis 2, because I didn't have healthy bonding, this is way too porous. And so it's just one big gobbledygook. And so part of the work we're trying to do with someone with personality disorders and that sort of thing is build some sort of holding for them. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So yeah, if I don't have healthy bonding, this isn't clean.
It's not,
It's not clean.
or it's not claimed.
It's not claimed because it's not clean because now it looks like that.
Right.
Okay, and so in your profession and my profession, it's trying to even build some substancy so there's a foundation of who I am, who my true self is. Great question.
And just so I'm clear, personality disorders come from not having a bonding? Or?
They can come from a lot of places, but attachment disorder is a huge part of how we learn how to survive. If you look at Mate's work, he says ADHD is because my parents probably didn't, not blaming parents at all. They were doing whatever, so I start learning these other movies around. And so you know, so during those formative years of 0 to 5, so much is going on that helps us learn how to survive this world, or we'd already be dead. Okay? So this piece is how we play with it. What's cool is as we do this and we talk and we see, hear, and value, which is, as those of you that know me, I think is the magic to any of our healing and growth. As we see, hear, and value these two, they get quieter, and I come from here and my brain starts to have different experiences, so it has a larger choice of survival modes. So all of a sudden now those pathways are open, and I can call my sponsor. Or I can see someone in a very difficult situation up in the ski valley in my little padded white room that they give me. But then I can go in and I can be a goofball. And Kayla just knows I'm being a goofball and I'm getting it now, so I can go back in there. And so we start doing that rather than what I say with the kid. The juniors at the high school call me the poop man, because we talk about pooping sideways. Instead of trying to have this stuff and hold on to it because I'm supposed to be one of these, and as I push everything down, it is gonna fly out sideways. And so how do we work with this, and how do we find our safe containers to have survival skills that hold me, like calling a sponsor, like goofing off with Kayla, like I can always call Genevieve. Making sure I feel okay about files at Rio Grande because I know Ashley's helping me make sure that they're staying clinically sound. So how do we connect to those pieces? Then I can own it rather than blaming the external world and then demanding an external source to have me be okay, the rescuer.
You're probably getting this, but what happens when you have PTSD?
So,
I know that
such
the
as
system's overridden.
right, and so a big piece of the PTSD, like we talk about in grief group, is that emotional regression and cognitive regression back to that trauma. So that's a good football tonight, or a goldfish. I kind of like that.
It's like a walnut.
There we go. So in that piece of PTSD, it's really working how to start moving out of trauma so we can move into grief work. Because trauma, I am caught in my limbic system. Trauma is limbic, grief is frontal lobe. So it's working with someone, including myself. Because probably one of the reasons I tell that story so much is I probably have some PTSD from that day, but I talk about it so much and wiggle it around, and now it sits in my frontal lobe and goes, what a trippy story. So it's getting them to work so there can be some level of safety within my internal system that allows me to get into my frontal lobe.
How is grief in the frontal lobe, though? I would think it would be in scared child.
Loss is in the scared child. And I start to scaffold into my grief. Great question. And so somehow I've found enough safety